Hector Ayala's life dramatically changed the day he stumbled across 3 mystical tiger amulets. Let's jump into today's video and find out who is the White Tiger. Hector Ayala was walking through an alley when he spotted 3 necklaces on the ground. Just a short time earlier, the amulets had been discarded there by the members of the group the Sons of the Tiger when they disbanded. He put on the amulets and was instantly transformed into the White Tiger. The amulets grant the White Tiger superhuman strength, speed, agility, stamina, and durability. It also grants him heightened animal senses, the mastery of martial arts, and an accelerated healing factor. After being transformed, the White Tiger quickly found himself saving a train yard guard from being killed by a gang. During the altercation, White Tiger tried to reason with a young gang member that had a gun, but his efforts were for naught. The security guard, who had been knocked out by the gang, came to and struck the young man from behind with his nightstick, killing him. The White Tiger struck the guard in anger, knocking him unconscious for killing the young man. He then left the scene and transformed back into Hector. After the transformation, Hector became extremely nauseated, but he was able to make it home and sneak into his room through a window. The next morning, the police showed up at the Ayala's apartment to question Hector. His radio had been found near the train yard with blood on it. Hector, unable to remember anything about the previous night, panicked, fled the apartment, and transformed into the White Tiger. Now, Hector and the White Tiger were both wanted by the police as suspects in the death of the young gang member. As the White Tiger evaded the police, he found himself confronted by Hobie Brown, the Prowler. Hobie had been working with Manuel Lopez, the young gang member that had been killed. He had been mentoring Lopez, trying to get him back on the right path. He was there to punish the White Tiger for Manuel's death. So the two vigilantes battled it out on the rooftops as the White Tiger continuously proclaimed his innocence. Eventually, he got the Prowler to believe him, so they ended their battle and the two went their separate ways. Meanwhile, the train yard security guard had come to and admitted to killing the gang member, clearing Hector and the White Tiger. Then, after transforming back into Hector, he came across a newspaper article about the White Tiger. As he looked it over, he noticed the amulets around the tiger's neck and came to the realization that he himself was the White Tiger. Now, up until this point, Hector had no knowledge of the fact he was the White Tiger and had no memories of his actions as the White Tiger. But his realization of his dual persona unlocked those memories and they all came flooding in. Next, the White Tiger would soon find himself facing off with another vigilante who wrongly accused him of someone's death. This time, it was the Jack of Hearts blaming him for his father's death. When the Jack of Hearts' father was murdered, he overheard one of his father's killers state that the tiger was waiting for him in the Bronx. Then, after hearing about a White Tiger operating in the Bronx, Jack incorrectly assumed that the man was referring to the White Tiger. The two would battle until they fell off of a roof and the Jack of Hearts was knocked unconscious. Right as their battle ended, the police and Hector's sister Awilda arrived on the scene. They took the Jack of Hearts to the hospital and there the White Tiger was questioned by Detective D'Angelo and a private investigator known as Blackbird. He was also pressed by his sister Awilda on what had happened to her brother Hector. Not wanting to see his sister in distress, he unmasked, revealing that he was Hector. Then, as the White Tiger continued to talk with authorities, a group of assailants bum-rushed the hospital to kill the Jack of Hearts. The White Tiger and his new allies took care of the assailants. To help the Jack of Hearts, Hector teamed up with D'Angelo and Blackbird to investigate his father's death. During the investigation, Hector came to find out his brother Filippo was running drugs for an organization known as the Corporation. That same organization was responsible for the murder of the Jack of Hearts' father. The White Tiger had Filippo lead him to the docks where a ship named the El Tigre was docked. The Jack of Hearts soon found his way to the docks as well, along with Iron Fist and Shang-Chi, who had been recruited by Blackbird. Together, they fought their way into the ship where White Tiger soon discovered that his own brother Filippo had been the mastermind of the organization. His brother Filippo, after being rejected by Fu Manchu, realized his plan had failed and triggered a bomb he had strapped to himself. The White Tiger granted his brother his last wish and didn't interfere. Hector would go on to enroll in Empire State University where he would meet Peter Parker. He would also meet a young lady, Holly Gillis, and the two would enter into a relationship. During Hector's time at ESU, he continued to fight crime as the White Tiger and made allies of Spider-Man and other heroes. During one of his adventures, his dual identity as the White Tiger was exposed to the masses. This exposure would later lead to his parents and sister being murdered by Gideon Mace. The white tiger went after Mace, but he was gunned down and almost killed. His almost lifeless body was left in front of the Daily Bugle building as a message to all heroes. The white tiger would go on to recover, but the near-death experience caused Hector to re-evaluate being the white tiger. A few weeks later, he decided to move away with Holly to an area where no one would know he was ever the white tiger. He gave the amulets to Blackbird to return to the Sons of the Tiger. Time passed, and Hector returned to New York after his relationship with Holly ended. Years later, Hector would somehow regain the tiger amulets and become the white tiger again. But on just his second day back in action as the white tiger, he came across a pawnshop robbery in which a police officer had been killed. The robbers fled when he arrived, leaving the white tiger standing over a dead cop when the police showed up. The white tiger was arrested and charged with the officer's murder. Luke Cage and Iron Fist, who knew Hector would never do what he had been accused of, went to Matt Murdock and tried to convince him to represent Hector. After visiting Hector in jail, Murdock agreed to defend him. Matt Murdock did his best to defend Hector, but he was still found guilty in the court of law. After being found guilty, Hector had a meltdown. He broke free of the guards and picked up a gun one of them had dropped. He fled out of the courthouse onto the courthouse steps where he was gunned down. The tiger amulets would end up in the possession of Hector Ayala's niece, Angela Del Toro, who would become the next white tiger. If you want to know more about Angela as the white tiger, you can click on the link at the end of this video. Well, that's the history of Hector Ayala, the white tiger, and that'll do it for today's video. As always, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy day to stop by the channel and check out this video. Please like, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again real soon, but until then, I'm outie. Peace.